Alright, so I do have a quick announcement I wanted to make. I am going to lower my birth chart readings rate from $40 down to $30. They were already discounted for the holidays, and I just kind of kept that discounted rate there, but now I'm lowering it again to $30. So that is as low as I'm going to go. So if you are interested in getting a birth chart reading for yourself or someone else, you can always check out my website for more information. That's manic.mercurian.net, or you can reach out to me directly, manic.mercurian@gmail.com. Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, February 27th through Sunday, March 5th, 2023. This week, we're very much continuing to hurdle into new territory. There are lots of new developments happening, lots of newness. And I feel like a little bit of a broken record because this is kind of what I've been saying over the last several weeks. But, that's what the signs and the symbolism continue to point to. We still have all the planets direct. Last week we had Venus move into Aries. We had a new moon in Pisces early last week. So both of those are pointing to, a new chapter, newness, lots of spontaneity. And this may sound cliche or meaningless, but it's really not. This is actually very unusual for this time of year. Typically with Sun in Pisces, this is supposed to be about endings. We're supposed to be a little bit focused on the past, integrating and contemplating and kind of, thinking about things. But really, that's not generally for most people. I really don't think that's what the focus is at all. There's really hardly any activity going on in Pisces at all. Really, the focus is more on Aries, and we have Mercury in Aquarius. So these are forward moving energies. And again, all the planets are direct, so that's very powerful as well. We also have more activity going on in Aries. Very interesting activity happening in Aries this week. Basically, the way I'm phrasing it is Venus, Jupiter, and Chiron will all be conjunct in Aries this week. They'll all be within 1 or 2 degrees away from one another, and we will get the exact conjunctions of Venus conjoining Jupiter and then Venus conjoining Chiron. Basically, Venus is passing these two other bodies. So there is a lot of symbolism there. I'm going to wait until those exact days to really unpack that, but there is definitely a lot to unpack there. Other than that, we have Moon is waxing looks like from Gemini to either Leo or Virgo, depending on your time zone. So again, I always say that this is a pretty friendly area for the Moon to traverse over. Moon is in joy in Gemini. It's in domicile in Cancer. It does pretty well in Leo. So that these are some good signs for the Moon to transit through during the duration of this week. Besides that, we do have a first quarter moon in Gemini to start off the week. So that's going to make us pretty wound up and pretty riled up, pretty very action oriented. So that's a great time to start things. We'll talk more about that in the day by day forecast, of course. And lastly, I need to mention, of course, that we do have one planetary ingression. Mercury will move into Pisces this week. So, I do call myself the manic Mercurian. I am very much ruled by Mercury, and Mercury will be, it's the only planet to be in detriment and fall in the same sign. So Mercury transiting through Pisces is pretty rough, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I guess on the positive side, we can be more open to unusual ideas with Mercury entering Pisces. We can also be more open to learning about spirituality and emotion and things of that nature, things that typically slip through our fingers. On the other hand, though, there is the potential for kind of mental cloudiness, brain fog, not truly understanding things. It's almost like you're kind of asleep with Piscean transits, and you don't really wake up until the planet has entered Aries. I think this is especially true with Mercury, since Mercury will be in detriment there. So very interesting, lots to unpack. Let's just get into the day-by-day forecast here. Okay, so we start out Monday, February 27th with Moon in Gemini, and we actually get that first quarter moon very early in the day. So this is definitely excuse me, I need to adjust my screen here. Definitely a very kind of sudden, abrupt way to start the week. I actually kind of like this for a Monday. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but we had this like really kind of sleepy, slow start to the week. So this, I think, is much better. Let's start it. Let's get things done. Let's get things moving. I think that's more fitting for a Monday. Yeah, and especially because, like I said, this technically the peak of this aspect. When it technically happens, it's very early in the morning Eastern Standard Time. So even as you're just waking up, in the morning, this first quarter moon may have already technically happened, but we'll still feel it for the rest of the day as well. First quarter moons, I say, are the most active phase of the lunar cycle, even more so than a full moon. The moon will appear half full, which I know is confusing, but it's called a quarter moon because it's 1/4 of the way through its cycle. So this is the part where whatever new beginning that kind of began to emerge or began to be thought of or dreamt of during the Pisces new moon a week ago, now that new idea has its own identity. It's if we compare it to a seed that was planted, now it's really shooting up and making itself known. It has roots now. It has branches sprouting, and this is disruptive. This is it's very action oriented and it's very disruptive. I always say on the negative side, these things can make you stressed, anxious. It can be difficult to rest. Things can be chaotic. But take advantage of this. This is an excellent time for starting something new, especially something having to do with Gemini. So something having to do with, I don't know, maybe being a little bit more spontaneous, introducing yourself to someone, or starting some kind of conversation or communication line, or maybe learning about something new. All these things kind of have to do with Gemini. Also, of course, look to where this falls in your chart. Is this affecting your 10th house? Then maybe it would behoove you to start something new in your area of profession or your career, reputation. Is this in your home, in your 4th house? So it's affecting your home and family. Then that's where the activity will be, etc. You can always look to that. Where do these things fall in your chart if you want more specific information. Okay, but that's the main thing. And again, like I said, we'll feel this all day. That these things tend to rile us up because there's a need for change. There's a need for initiation with a quarter moon like this. We're How do I put this? Even though the quarter moon aspect will be fading by the end of the day, I think we'll almost feel like we're feeling it even more by the end of the day because the moon will be approaching Mars. So that, again, technically the quarter moon will be ending by aspect, but moon approaching Mars will give us more of that riled up, anxious, but also confident feelings, I guess, if that makes sense. The desire to start something new, the desire for change, all of that is very reminiscent of what a quarter moon typically is, if that makes sense. So although technically it will be ending, it'll feel like it's almost flaring up again as the moon approaches Mars. So again, it's kind of the same pros and cons. On the cons, this looks like a really bad day for resting. I think we're all familiar, hopefully, with Gemini and how scattered it can be. So having a first quarter moon there, definitely probably a lot to handle. We may be very busy today. And as moon approaches Mars, very riled up, but take advantage of this. Be active in some way. If there's nothing in your life that you really want to start or change, just maybe be physically active today. Work out, go for a walk, whatever it is that you do to be active. For Tuesday, February 28th, moon will already enter Cancer. It's late in the day, though. It's still in Gemini most of the day, Eastern Standard Time. So because moon is still in Gemini, it's still squaring the sun, at least by sign. So I would say that we're kind of in the aftermath of that first quarter moon from Monday. We're still feeling a little riled up. We're still, I don't know, maybe experiencing some newness, some change, some recent developments that may have happened very quickly from the day prior. We're still feeling a little bit tense, wound up, still probably a little bit action oriented today as well. because we're still, although the first quarter moon aspect has ended, we're still definitely experiencing it, if that makes sense. Other than that, things do change pretty dramatically late in the day when moon enters Cancer. So this will be evening Eastern Standard Time. Moon will leave Gemini, enter Cancer. This is a completely different vibe, of course, because Cancer and Gemini are different signs. with Moon, with Moon and Gemini for the start of the week, Gemini is a very intellectual energy. It's a little bit detached. It can be very fun for the Moon because we don't have to take things so seriously. Although things may have gotten a little bit serious as the Moon passed over Mars. But with Moon entering Cancer, Cancer is probably the most emotional sign. And Moon represents emotions. So as Moon enters Cancer, it is strengthened by an emerging trine aspect from the Sun in Pisces. In other words, we have Sun in Pisces, Moon entering Cancer. Both the luminaries are in water signs, so there's a lot of heavy emotion that comes with these placements. And everyone always asks me, is this good or bad? Well, I mean, emotion itself has a full range, you know what I mean? Moon is at home in Cancer. Moon is neither a benefic nor a malefic. In other words, it's not an overwhelmingly good or bad energy. It's really a lot of both. Emotion obviously can be good or bad or neutral. So yeah, heavy emotion that can be difficult, but it can also be a gateway to intuition and experiencing things on a deep level. So that's kind of where the focus shifts to late in the day. Definitely a very different kind of vibe. Everyone may be very much in their feels starting late in the day Tuesday. So for Wednesday, March 1st, we get that exact trine aspect between the moon and the sun. If you want to be technical, it looks like it'll happen when the sun is at 10 degrees Pisces and moon will be at 10 degrees Cancer. So it looks like afternoon Eastern Standard Time. And this is well, I was going to say it's always great, but it's almost always great. Obviously, it depends on your own personal astrology, but for probably 99% of people, moon trining the sun is a good day. It, of course, you can look to where it falls in your chart for more specifics, but wherever it falls in your chart, trines are the easiest aspects. They create conditions where you can be a little bit lazy because things tend to go well. And with moon trining sun, these are, of course, probably the most kind of powerful bodies in the sky. So this creates a really stable, harmonious environment. This is happening in water signs, so we may be very emotional, but it tends to be in a stable kind of way. This could also be really great for accessing intuition or spirituality, like I mentioned before. And this will be especially great for you water sign people. If you have a lot of water signs in your chart, this is going to be your time. You're going to be kind of on a high right now. Like everything's going well. You're feeling really powerful. So that's excellent. But for the rest of us as well, we can all experience that energy. We can all experience that strength in emotion and intuition and such. Moving right along to Thursday, March 2nd, moon continues through Cancer, so we don't have that exact trine aspect anymore, but it's still pretty close. So still very stable, very emotional, maybe very sensitive, but stable. We're feeling pretty good, generally speaking, as a collective. Let's see here. By now, there's actually a lot going on for Thursday. So, where should we begin? You can see here Venus has already conjoined Jupiter at 12 degrees Aries. Technically, Venus has not reached Chiron yet, but you can see here this is a triple conjunction for sure. Venus and Jupiter at 12 degrees Aries with Chiron at 13 degrees Aries. So let's unpack that here. First of all, I think it's very interesting that Venus and Jupiter, I think they're called the Great Benefics or something of that nature. I believe they are they're basically the easiest planets to work with in astrology. If you see Venus and or Jupiter in the sky, they both look very shiny and sparkly and pretty, and then their themes have to do with abundance and pleasure and desire, all these really kind of nice, soft things to deal with. There are some bad sides to Venus and Jupiter, but very few. It's very, few and far between. So basically, both the planets that symbolize abundance and pleasure more than any others are at the same place in Aries. So this is really showing that our abundance, our pleasure, is in themes that have to do with Aries. So in new things, in initiation, in being a little bit self-centered or focused on ourselves, there's nothing wrong with focusing on you, taking care of you, focusing on self-improvement, things of that nature. That's where the focus is with Venus and Jupiter in Aries. But it's not just those that are conjunct. They are also conjunct with Chiron. So that's where it gets really interesting. Chiron, like I've mentioned, I feel like I've talked about Chiron many times in these forecasts, but you probably know this spiel already. Since 2018, Chiron's been in Aries. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's basically symbolizing your wounds. It's very karmic and very kind of therapeutic. A lot of this, I don't know, it makes me think of therapy sessions because Chiron represents our wounds and how we have dealt with them, how we've learned from them, or maybe how we haven't learned from them. Maybe they're just still kind of there. Typically with Chiron, you have to heal others in order to heal yourself. And with Chiron and Aries, we've all been very vocal about our wounds and our past traumas and such. You can see how everyone generally speaking has been a little bit, easily triggered or offended since 2018. There's cancel culture and all of that. Also, the protests, things have become very politicized. It's very intense. But much of that I would kind of chalk up to Chiron in Aries. And I really want to stress that I'm not judging. I'm going to do my best not to judge any of that. I don't think it's necessarily, maybe aspects of it are positive or negative, but as a whole, we have to just be objective and just kind of observe these things when we're approaching astrology, I think, and just learn from it, if that makes sense. Anyway, so hopefully you kind of know loosely what Chiron and Aries is about. So now with Venus approaching Chiron, I do think this is really nice because, like I said, this is such a turbulent energy. It's very sensitive. Chiron and Aries symbolizes all of us wanting increased understanding and equality and such since 2018. But we want these things in such a passionate, dramatic way that I think there's been a lot of destruction that has come from the style of communication, from the approach of those things. So having Venus approach Chiron, I think is really nice because Venus tends to soften things a little bit. With Venus, there is some empathy, I think, that comes with that. Venus is a very feminine energy. So it kind of says, like, how can we approach these things in a way that is maybe not so direct or belligerent? Can we just, like, tone this down? Can we be a little bit more graceful with how we approach these things? Can we be a little bit maybe more charming or subtle? I think this is kind of the exact energy that Chiron and Aries need. So one interpretation would be this can soften things a little bit in this area, which I think would be excellent. Jupiter is approaching Chiron as well. We're not going to get the exact conjunction between Jupiter and Chiron. I know this is really technical with 3 planets all together. But technically Jupiter will conjoin Chiron next week, but I do want to talk about it since they're all within orb of a conjunction, you could say. So Jupiter approaching Chiron is interesting. One way of approaching this interpretation is, like I mentioned, Jupiter does have some qualities in common with Venus. So like Venus, Jupiter, would help to bring expansion and bring an abundant energy. It tends to make things more fun, more kind of easier, so maybe that can kind of help things. But on the other side of things, I did mention that there are some challenging aspects to Venus and Jupiter. Not many, but there are some. With Jupiter, the main one is that Jupiter is the expander. Typically that is a good thing that can be helpful, but I would approach this with a little bit of caution. If Chiron in Aries is already so sensitive and making us a little bit, very passionate for sure, for better or for worse, having Jupiter approach Chiron and expand that, kind of blow that up, I do think that could be very interesting. That it looks like that could be a little bit chaotic. So I am glad that Venus is there for this Jupiter Chiron conjunction to kind of, to make sure that, maybe this thing will get blown up, but there's going to be a little bit of softness there still. There's going to be a little bit of balance there, hopefully, with Venus there. Does that make sense? I feel like this is such a kind of mess, but basically Chiron, Venus, Jupiter all together in Aries. It looks like something very pivotal is happening in history. I think you could even say. I think this could have like somewhat historical proportions. I would pay attention to things going on in the world or in the country that you're in today, especially with protests. I could see this going either way. I mean, with Jupiter's influence, I could see protests becoming exacerbated and blowing up into something way bigger than they started out as. But with Jupiter and especially Venus there, I could also see things being resolved, coming to a conclusion or coming to a compromise, having effective communication and understanding. And this applies, as above so below. This applies not only to large demographics and movements in society, but also on an individual level as well. What are your personal wounds, or what are the personal wounds, the traumas of people in your life, and is there a greater understanding that is being sought, because I don't know, maybe just watch for it on Thursday. That greater understanding and empathy could be met on Thursday, but things could also go out of hand as well. Does that make sense? Hopefully, I so hope that makes at least a little bit of sense. But very interesting stuff. We do have more happening on Thursday though. So Mercury will conjoin Saturn today. So it's kind of interesting having multiple conjunctions on the same day. The Mercury-Saturn conjunction does not really aspect the Venus-Jupiter or the Chiron-Venus-Jupiter conjunction at all, but it is happening at the same time, basically. With Mercury conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, it means that we're being very thorough with our communications. We don't want to jump to conclusions. Generally speaking, of course, we may be a little bit skeptical, and we may be a little bit kind of dry or blunt with our communication. We want to be factual. We want to be objective. We don't want to let emotion color our thinking or our communication, things of that nature. So it can be a little bit of a tough kind of energy. It can be a little bit harsh, but it's excellent. This type of energy is excellent for really, making sure your facts are straight and that your information is of quality, your communication is efficient and effective, etc. So I do think this is really excellent for, considering everything that I just kind of mentioned that's going down today. If you are going to have a really kind of grandiose, intense conversation about your past, why not make sure that everything is factual? On the one hand, Mercury conjunct Saturn could make the communication style a little tense or harsh, but I don't think this is a bad thing as long as the information is true and the communication is thorough. Very soon after that, Mercury, this conjunction happens at 29 degrees Aquarius, the very last degree of Aquarius. So not long after that, within the same day on Thursday, March 2nd, Mercury will already leave Aquarius, and enter Pisces. So very interesting stuff. Lots to talk about for Thursday. So Mercury entering Pisces, like I talked about in the intro, this is generally a difficult energy for most people. If you were born with Mercury in Pisces, this is going to be easy for you. You're used to this. Or even if you have Mercury in a water sign, this is going to be a pretty familiar energy for you. But for most people, though, Mercury in Pisces is a little bit difficult because Mercury represents the mental energy, how we communicate, how we learn the information we come across. And when Mercury's in Pisces, Pisces it's not really oriented toward objective information. It's more subjective. It's more emotional. It's more focused on, how do I see things? What is my truth? You know what I mean? Rather than what is the truth? What are the facts? So typically the way Mercury works is very opposite of how Pisces works. Typically it is, it's like I don't want to express my truth. I want to get the facts straight. I want to learn the facts that we can all agree on. That is basically just being objective. But with Mercury and Pisces, we can't really do that. We don't know the facts. The facts may be convoluted. There's different ways you can look at the facts or interpret them. And then that becomes very confusing because, well, if there are endless ways to understand reality, then how do we even know what's real and what's not? And the answer is you don't. That's kind of the theme with any Pisces transit is, you're not really going to understand everything. And on the one hand, I think we have to have boundaries to, ensure that we're being as grounded as possible. But on the other hand, you also just have to accept that you're not going to understand everything. You're not going to have all the answers. That's what we learn in Pisces. You have to just kind of go with it. You have to surrender a little bit. I'm not saying to just, throw all your cares away and just say, like you give up and you're just going to go with whatever happens. But you do have to surrender on some level to the absurdity and the mystery of life. Also, one last point about that. With Mercury and Pisces, with any detriment energies as well, detriment energies are excellent for thinking outside the box, being open to unusual ideas, or having a very, very unique kind of perspective. So that is, one advantage as well. We may be open to information that we otherwise wouldn't be. That can be difficult, like be a lot of baggage, but it can also be fruitful. We can come across very interesting information with Mercury and Pisces. We may not know exactly what to do with it or how to understand it right away, but we can at least start that journey, so to speak. Okay, I think we talked about Thursday. Definitely enough. Going forward to Friday, March 3rd, this is when we get the exact conjunction between Venus and Chiron. So like I said in the intro, really this is a triple conjunction, but we can break it down into technically 3 conjunctions. So we already had Venus conjoining Jupiter on Thursday. Now we have Venus conjoining Chiron. The last conjunction here technically will be Jupiter passing Chiron next week. But basically, these are all 3 right, within a degree of one another. With Venus conjoining Chiron, again, this kind of does help to soften things a little bit. I think that whatever is happening right now that has to do with this, again, those therapeutic conversations, or maybe new activity with protests around the world, whatever it is, I think it's something that it's not taking just one day to play out. Friday is just, further development of what really got going in a very kind of loud, provocative way on Thursday, if that makes sense. I do think with Venus making this exact conjunction to Chiron, this is definitely emphasizing this softness, this, Venusian energy. I'm definitely, clearly less wary about Venus conjoining Chiron than I am Jupiter conjoining Chiron. When we get that Jupiter-Chiron exact conjunction next week, that's when things could really kind of fly off the handle or get out of control. But for now, we have Venus there. Venus is kind of the mediator. It's ensuring some kind of balance here. Venus is in detriment, So again, having Venus and Mercury in detriment, maybe we're seeing things from a different kind of way. That could be part of this too. So, Venus conjoining Chiron. Let's mellow out. Let's soften things. I'm almost picturing Venus like a mother, even though typically Venus would not be a motherly influence necessarily, but maybe Venus is like a very feminine counselor, some kind of counselor with like very feminine energy that's kind of saying like, let's just tone things down. Let's have some lemonade or tea or something, and can we look at this from a different kind of way? Can we think outside the box? Can we, how else can we think about this? Because I think there's been a lot of built up frustration with Chiron in Aries since 2018. So Venus conjoining Chiron, very interesting stuff. That's the main aspect we have for Friday. I'm glad we don't have any more, to be totally honest with you. We do have Moon leaving Chiron, or excuse me, leaving Cancer and entering Leo. So this, of course, shifts everything. Whenever we have the Moon entering a different sign, this kind of shifts things, shifts the moods, the emotional standpoint of the day, I guess you could say. I really love the combination of Sun and Pisces with Moon and Leo. They are very different, but they do have some interesting commonalities. Like I mentioned before, it is kind of nice having the Moon in a fire sign during these winter months. We can bring about some spontaneity, some flair. We already have a lot of that with Chiron, Venus, and Jupiter in Aries, but Moon and Leo is, Leo is it's fixed fire. So when Moon is in Leo, I do think this is generally a nice transit because we can be very confident. We can be very firm, but also, this is a fun-loving energy. And the combination of Sun and Pisces with Moon and Leo, both of these are very warm energies. They're supporting us and being friendly, maybe being kind of soft with one another. Let's just have fun. Let's play around. This is happening at the same time as all this kind of intense other stuff that I just talked about, but I do think Moon and Leo with Sun and Pisces kind of, combining these makes a very soft and fun-loving type of dynamic. So I think that it's definitely very excellent. I did want to mention too, we are gearing up for a full moon. We're not going to have the full moon this week, but moon is only one sign away now from where it will be full in Virgo next week. So just wanted to mention that. So as we're going throughout this week, we are gradually, the vibe is becoming more intense as we're approaching that full moon. The moon is gaining more light. There's more activity kind of building up, increasing. For Saturday, March 4th, moon continues on through Leo, and I do think it's interesting that moon now trines this triple Aries conjunction. So, in other words, by now we have Venus at 15 degrees Aries, Chiron at 14 degrees Aries, and Jupiter at 12 degrees Aries. So they're all about halfway through Aries, let's just say. And Moon will cross halfway through Leo, so it will trine Jupiter, then Chiron, then Venus. All about, let's just say about halfway through the day, Eastern Standard Time, a little bit afternoon. So I think this is actually really great. Trines are always easy. The only downside of trines is that they can be lazy, but I really don't think that's a bad thing when we are talking about this triple conjunction in Aries, because it's already so intense. It looks, yes, Venus and Jupiter are the great benefics. I do think I think their energies will be very beneficial. Maybe we can really solve some big issues that we've been struggling with since 2018. We can find some, we can find some closure or increased understanding. There's a lot of goodness that can come there, but I'm still wary because, like I mentioned, Jupiter expands things. So it's still intense, even if things are resolving and, there's this kind of sweet, like, Mary Poppins energy. I don't know why that just came into my mind, but even if that's the case, it's still intense, okay? So I definitely don't hate this trine from the moon in Leo. Because, first of all, the trine from the moon just means that this is the general focus. The moon represents kind of our general feelings, our moods. So moon making an aspect to this triple conjunction means that this is what everyone's kind of feeling, thinking about, whatever it is that's been happening since Thursday. This is very much the focus on Saturday, but there's some kind of harmonious energy. There's some stability there, at least, especially from our perception. We're viewing it in a stable way. We are content with it on some level, generally speaking, of course. But this is especially true because of the sign that the moon is in. Moon is in Leo, fixed fire. You know, only in Leo do you get that really stable confidence, and that, Leo is the sign of pride because of that reason. It's fixed fire, so it's fiery, it's passionate, it's warm in a consistent kind of way. So I think there is some kind of, I don't know if I want to say groundedness with Leo, but it's firm. It's not going to change itself. It's steady. It's stable. So Moon in Leo shows that we are feeling a little bit confident, feeling kind of fun, feeling firm. And trining this triple conjunction, we're feeling firm about whatever's going on. We're feeling good about it. Hopefully that makes sense. This is a really kind of wild dynamic to unpack. Other than that, Moon continues through Leo, so definitely some generally good vibes. Again, I want to mention just one more time, I love the dynamic of Sun and Pisces with Moon and Leo. Very warm, very open energies as well. Both these signs are very open to other people, to emotion, to information. So definitely interesting stuff there as well. Let's see. Well, let's go to, I like to always talk about what to do for the weekend, but I want to go to Sunday first before I get into that. So for Sunday, March 5th, Moon continues through Leo basically all day. I will say right off the bat, depending on your time zone, Moon will enter Virgo either very late Sunday or very early Monday. Eastern Standard Time, it happens right around 12 a.m. So let's just say Moon is in Leo basically all day Sunday. And the Moon does make some interesting aspects, I think. So first, the Moon will sextile Mars, and it's still coming off of that trine that it made with Jupiter, Chiron, and Venus one day prior as well. But early on Sunday morning, Moon will sextile Mars. I think this can be I think this can be definitely a very good energy. Sextiles are harmonious, like you've probably heard me say. Mars in Gemini. Mars has been in Gemini since, I believe, late October, so it's been there a long time. It's kind of riled us up with our communication style. We can be a little bit competitive with words or facts or communication. We can be a little bit sarcastic or eager to debate with Mars and Gemini. And, on the negative side, I guess you could say this could make communication a little bit tense or stressful or aggravated. But on the positive side, this could be fun as well. It could be just like a fun energy for being witty, or that witty banter, or that debating type of vibe. Now with the Moon sextiling Mars, it shows that there's this kind of positive connection there. Moon is in Leo, so we're still feeling kind of warm, outgoing, and with the sextile to Mars, I think maybe we can kind of channel that witty banter kind of energy, or being a little bit provocative or competitive with our words or communication. After that, later in the day, in the evening Eastern Standard Time, Moon will oppose Saturn. So Moon at 29 degrees Leo opposing Saturn at 29 degrees Aquarius. This is a little bit more contentious, I would say. This means that there's a clash between how we feel in the moment versus what do you need to do to be responsible. I mean, this is kind of a very basic opposition that in some ways we always experience, right? Because what may feel good in the moment may obviously be very different than what's going to be truly good for you in a long-lasting way. This is the dichotomy between the Moon and Saturn. Moon, which represents how we feel in the moment, versus Saturn, which represents wisdom and patience and long-term ramifications and long-term, consequences and things of that nature. And I think this is especially true with the signs that these planets are in. Moon is in Leo, which is all about kind of self-indulgence, being in the moment. Let's not think about these things too much. Let's just let's vibe in the moment. Let's say how we feel in the moment and be a little bit spontaneous. But this is clashing with Saturn and Aquarius, which is saying, we need to think about the long term. Let's think about society and where we fit in with everyone else. What is everyone else thinking about this? How do our actions affect other people? Or, of course, the long term and all that. So this is not a huge deal. Moon is very quick. Lunar aspects are very brief, and I usually don't even cover them, to be totally honest. But I did want to mention that because it could bring a little bit of stressful energy. I think with oppositions, there's always a need for balance, of course. So it's not about totally disregarding one side of this and going to the other. Of course, there has to be a balance here. We have to find ways that we can seek long-term satisfaction. I'm like inventing new words here. That we can seek long-term satisfaction, but also honor our current feeling as well. We don't have to hate our lives in order to create a better future. We can enjoy the process. I think that's how we connect both sides of this opposition. Enjoy the process of building a better tomorrow. I feel like I'm a politician now. Okay, I think that's enough. That's basically what I have for you for this week. I'm sorry. Yeah, I feel like that was a mess. But these things are very technical in my defense. This is it's very interesting times that we're in, for sure. I mean, there's never really a dull moment. If there is ever a dull moment, I guess I should say, it's very short-lived. And then things become very interesting. Speaking of things getting interesting, definitely a lot of very interesting stuff going on for March. Next week we have Saturn entering Pisces. This is a big deal. It's a big deal whenever we have outer planets enter new signs, because it's almost like entering a new season, but it's not just a season that's going to last for a few months. It's a season that's going to last for years. So this changes the whole kind of background vibe, the whole environment. I've mentioned that with Saturn entering Pisces, I believe that this indicates a collapse of the structure. For the last 5 years or so, we've had Saturn in Aquarius and Capricorn. We've had a lot of structure. We've had a lot of rules and regulations. I think, that's kind of obvious at this point. But with Saturn entering Pisces, it's almost like all of that kind of just disappears, for better or for worse. There's a collapse of the structure. And I don't know exactly how severe that's going to be, but I do think it's going to be very interesting. Other than that, we have a full moon in Virgo next week. I'm personally not excited for that, but I will, of course, be professional here and talk about the ways we can utilize that, of course. Other than that, we have the exact conjunction between Jupiter and Chiron next week. I already mentioned that. I'm not even going to talk about that anymore. And this isn't astrological, but I did want to mention we have daylight savings is changing next week too. Daylight savings time is ending, I think, technically. Whatever, but yeah, that's what I have for you this week. So I hope that helps. If you have any feedback, of course, you can always let me know. But yeah, very interesting stuff going on. I truly hope that you have a wonderful week and that these energies work for you, that you work the energies as well. Anyway, that's enough from me. But yeah, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.